Hey everyone, welcome to the Meaningful Revolution podcast. I am your host and certified high performance coach, Sean Butner, and this is the podcast where we help you live into your personal meaningful revolution by interviewing people about what they nerd about, obsess about, to help inspire you to live into what you love. So, this is going to be the last podcast of 2022, which is pretty amazing. And looking back at the year, I just wanted to first start off with some gratitude because it's been amazing hearing from you all. It's been seeing some of you out in the real world say how the podcast has impacted you, whether that's to start a journaling practice or to show more appreciation or to really consider how they're living their life. And those are those magic moments where it makes things a little bit more real when it's not just some guy talking to his computer and maybe another human being sometimes. I think the best episodes have been a lot of the interviews, and so I think as the state of the podcast goes, having started in August, having had a weekly release since then every Thursday in the morning, has been super fun and gratifying. And then knowing that it's impacting people, because that's what it matters. So when we talk about, so we hope to inspire you to have your personal meaningful revolution. What does that really mean? Well, if we break down meaningful revolution, meaningful in how I define it, it's just something you find fulfilling, something you find purposeful, something you find authentic, right? So meaningful tasks, meaningful endeavors, meaningful goals, all those types of things should be part of everyone's life, in my belief. Revolution for me is just a radical transformation at the very end of the day. So it could be, that having that revolution can have that impact in your communities and the people around you, and having an authentic movement, or living into your full alignment of your true self. So really what we want is that fulfilling transformation in your life. And there's a lot of different ways that can go about. There's a lot of different reasons why people don't lean into what they find meaningful more. Some of it very practical, right? You have obligations, you have family you're responsible to, and so it's noble to do the job that you don't love so that your family can thrive, right? So that's not a dispute. It's not this, blindly super positive, nothing bad ever happens things. It's a belief and way of living where you can find your authentic self in those struggles. And that's something that's really impacted me in my life. Growing up, my mom had breast cancer. Later on, she had complications years and years and years later from that treatment where her organs were shutting down after some heart surgery. And throughout that, she was always trying to find the funny, make it fun, reminding us that we'd look back and laugh at these terrible situations for kind of how ridiculous sometimes it can be. So I really look to that in life, and we've all had a really hard couple of years, and the economy is still super uncertain. So we're going into another year of potential uncertainty and pain. And my challenge to you, my hope for you, is that in spite of all those headwinds, that you can find a sense of joy, a sense of inner peace, a sense of emotional freedom, because you're working on and working towards those things that matter to you, that really are helping fill your heart with a capacity to handle the struggle that's coming on. So that's, I guess, a little bit of the philosophy, but I just wanted to end with that definition, because it's also been a year of trying to figure that out in this space. So that's the meaningful revolution. I wanted to also thank all the guests. Doing a little bit of analysis and because I have spreadsheets upon spreadsheets for this podcast, um, just kind of to help organize and when I do copy and stuff for all the episodes. But I feel like we're talking about meaningful revolutions. There's generally been 5 different buckets, and I'm looking down at my notes here. 5 different buckets of folks that were on the podcast this year. And so that's people who talked about mindset, people who talked about just better living, people who talked about connecting with people, people who talked about business and leadership, and then the folks who talked about health and wellness. So in no particular order, big shout out. So in mindset, we talked with Mike Seeley about having that performance mindset, being able to flip the switch and really kick it into gear when you wanted to. So thank you, Michael, for being on this year. Patricia Talman about facing your fear dragons, who, as a big nerd, I really thoroughly enjoyed that conversation. So big ups to Patricia. Shout out to you. Sherry Reichert Blue, of course, talking about celebrating each moment, treating it as precious because it really is, with her touching story. So thanks, Sherry. And then Elisa Bingley talking about, her story was just so great. So if you haven't listened to any of those episodes, definitely go back, download them, and check it out. In the living bucket, big shout out to Nicole Sugihara, who talked about rituals, especially in uncertain times. And, I think if you're paying attention, they're all uncertain times. So I think these processes, these rituals, these things that help us center can help us show up in the world. Of course, we had Dara Brady, who talked about creating things and building community as you built things, which I thought was a really great takeaway. So thank you. And then Moxie Emanuel about being accountable for how you feel and how you show up in the world with his accountability culture or accountable culture. So shout out there. Okay, in the connecting bucket, we had my guy James Holgren talked about creating moments when you're trying to move people into action, like in teaching. We had Majid Karim, who wrote his book about being the positive influence in your communities after living through a very troubled time in Lebanon with the Civil War, which is really amazing. Go check out his book. We had Sequoia Hall. We talked in general about community and politics and how, his philosophy on that. But I thought it was really great to show that, there are people that really care about how things work. And it's not bad, it's just we all need input. So shout out to Sequoia. Patrick Mosher talking about storytelling, one of the fundamental skills, I think, of human beings and conveying information and wisdom, or wisdom packets as he called it. So it was so great to think about stories in a different way. And I know I've taken what we talked about and have really tried to apply it into telling more stories here on this podcast. In the business and leadership, we have Emmanuel George, shout out to you, my man, talking about leadership in pharmacy, and really about identifying those blind spots. We had Jimmy Bradbury, thanks man, for talking about quitting your 9-to-5 to start a passion project that helped provide for your family. We had Trisha Deji, the Mom Mastermind, and someone who, again, took a leadership position with a problem that she identified, and I think is really super great work. And then Kristen Ekins, again, thank you so much for your talk about exponential inclusion. But really, I think in that particular talk, that sense of curiosity for life is so vital to navigating a world where there's uncertainty. So if we're talking about that, but it was just a great conversation, so check it out. And then finally, in the wellness bucket, health bucket, we had Carrie Petrie, we had Erin Hurley, and Natalie Fossbauer. Big shout out to y'all. And big shout out, I could go into and recap each of these podcasts, but every single one of them was super fun and super great to connect with. And I recommend, if you haven't heard any of these and you're struggling in one of these buckets or want to learn more, definitely go back into the podcast and check those episodes out. some of the unspoken heroes or unspoken people on the podcast, I put that in air quotes on the podcast, mutual mentor who I know a lot of these folks through is Brendan Burchard. And so, I was part of a mastermind with him where, during that mastermind, the idea for this podcast came out. So big shout out to you, brother. Thanks for the inspiration. Thanks for, being a good example of how to put good out in the world, and be very inspiring. So just shout out to him. There's so many other people to thank. Like, again, I could not have done any of this without the support of my wife, Ashley. So babe, thank you so much for believing in me, even when times I was pulling out my hair trying to figure out stuff. Again, it's so much easier when you have the people around you cheering you on, and for that I am ever in your debt. But I love you forever too, so maybe that's the same thing. I really don't know. But so folks, that's kind of a really high summary of this year. There's a lot of really exciting things coming next year that I can't wait to share with y'all. First and foremost, there'll be a running, at one point, a running personal revolution challenge, which I'm really excited for. The first one's going to be at the beginning of January. I'll have a link in the show notes below. If you're thinking like, how can I get really clear about my personal revolution, about the good I want to put on the world, about feeling that fulfilling transformation next year, and then how to build a plan, and then strategies and tactics and all that kind of good stuff to help make sure you follow through. So that's the 3-day summary or 3-day challenge summary in summary. Man, it's hard to talk sometimes. You get it. So rough 3 days is get clarity on your meaningful revolution, build your plan, and then have the strategies to follow through with it and commit. So super excited for that. Check that out in the show notes below. Yeah, that said, guys, I hope you have a fantastic end of the year. We got a lot of fantastic guests lined up for you already next year. So we're going to get right back into it. First week of January. And so I'm really excited for all of those. In the meantime, guys, too, if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with 3 folks. If you really want to help me out, go to Apple Podcasts, subscribe, and leave a comment. That really helps me and gets the word out on the podcast. You can also do that on Spotify or Google, so the major podcasting platforms. So help me out if you enjoy this. If not, then you're a jerk. No, I'm kidding. If you don't, it's totally cool too. But please help me out, and I'll just say that directly. So that said, guys, see you next year. This is Sean Butner signing off. Take care. I hope you loved this episode of the Meaningful Revolution podcast. And if you did, please share this with 3 of your friends to get the word out, and direct them to Apple Podcasts to subscribe and leave a comment, because that's what really helps us with the show. So you can also direct them to Spotify or Google. So most major podcasting platforms, you can find the Meaningful Revolution podcast. So, but Apple helps us out the most. So please direct your folks to there if you would. If you would like to start your personal meaningful revolution, I have some exciting news. This year, we're starting the Meaningful Revolution Challenge. First one being the first week in January. So sign up in the link below in the show notes here to spend 3 days for free live with me, where we'll go over defining and getting clarity on your personal meaningful revolution, that fulfilling transformation, that authentic self to show up in this next year. We'll spend on the second day building your plan so that you know what you need to do to make strides towards that personal meaningful revolution. And then thirdly, we'll talk about tips, tricks, and strategies to implement and to commit to your plan next year. So those are the 3 days. We'll have prizes. There'll be a chance to ask questions. There'll be a chance to, get some coaching if you need some in your particular situation, to get you in the game, to get you moving forward, to get you into that meaningful revolution, that fulfilling transformation. Also, if you'd like some one-on-one time, there's 2 options also below here where you can sign up for a strategy session. And the free strategy session I'll post on YouTube as part of a new series, full disclosure there. But during that call, you will get, you'll fill out an application. It'll help you think about your life in a different way, get you kind of primed for our 1-hour strategy session. It gives me a chance to identify some areas to focus on so that you get the most bang for your buck during that call. We build you a personalized strategy plan going forward with tools and tricks and habits and all that kind of great stuff. And it's all focused and customized to your life. So definitely click on that. If you're like, hey, I don't want this on YouTube, I'd like it a little bit private, it's $200 for that 1-hour call. Please make sure you sign up today because I only have so many slots each week where I can do these calls and they fill up quick. So don't miss your chance to get one-on-one coaching, get your strategy plan, your strategy session locked in by clicking on those links below.